cool. And 3, 2, 1, we are live. All right, what's up, everybody? Thank you. Welcome to the Weekly Jargon. I'm Abel Perez.
Jose Rodriguez.
And Rohi Zachariah.
And we are here, gentlemen, another beautiful week. Actually, it's been really hot. Extremely humid.
Triple digits, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. The other Monday, I felt just sick. Like my head hurt by the end of the day, and it didn't feel good. But I know we're used to it, and we say we know what to expect every year in the Central Valley. But once it comes, it's always like a shock. Like, gosh, why is it so hot?
You know, and you said it, we're used to it, right? So recently my AC went out, or at least the driver's side of the AC is not.
Oh, in your car.
It's not blowing the cold air.
So you're driving like Ace Ventura?
Well, and so my kids, when I'm taking them to school, or my wife is on the passenger side, they're cool because I'm blasting it. They're getting all the air. But it seems like, I don't know, maybe I'm low on Freon. I have to take it in tomorrow. But because of that, you know, you kind of take for granted the fact that we've had it with, you know, when it's summertime, we're either in an office that's being cooled down by the AC, or when we're at home, we're utilizing our AC. When we're in our cars, we're utilizing our AC. Yeah. But you forget that sometimes, you know, you're not in these conditions where AC is not available. And you take it for granted. So it's such a privilege to have it, I guess, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially here in the Central Valley. Other areas like the Central Coast, I asked a guy that was out here yesterday. As a matter of fact, I asked John, and he says, you know, driving up here to Madera was the first time I used the AC in my new truck, he says. Over a year.
Yeah.
And that's mainly
Where is he from?
He's out in the Central Coast.
Oh, my gosh.
San Luis, Napomo. Okay, out in that area. But again, I'm assuming because the weather out there is probably in the mid-70s, no need for an AC yet.
Wow.
But out here, we're talking about 107, 112. That it gets pretty dry and pretty hot quickly,
You know, and it's not common for a home in the coast to even have AC in the homes, right? And so they don't need them. Open the windows and let that fresh air blow.
So I guess we can segue to the conversation, climate
change,
global warming.
Global warming, yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, no, you know, and just to piggyback off that, ACs, that's something that you want to service. We're not an AC company, but just a person, a friend, I guess you could call me. Word of advice is keep servicing that AC unit because when they go out, you know, anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000 per unit. Yeah. And I'm getting pretty nervous. I have 2 units, one upstairs and downstairs, and I'm feeling like, you know, the house was built in 2001. We're getting right around that age where, you know, might need a replacement there.
And I'll tell you, I mean, because we have a couple of units that we manage and stuff, and that turn-on capacitor, it's a $300 part, but when it goes, it's the first part that usually goes. Yeah. And it's notorious. I guarantee if you have a unit long enough, it's gonna go out on you. Yeah. The other thing is, like you said, what we ran into is, I know we had one of our units went out, and the first thing we wanted, well, we'll just replace it. Can't you fix it? Oh, we don't fix them. We just, you know, it's replacement. We had to find a guy that was willing to go in. He said it's simple. It took him like 10 minutes. It was a wire that he had to, do, but he said most companies, they don't, that's it. Nowadays, it's replace it, spend the bill, get a brand new one, you know.
You know, you said it best, the word capacitator, right? It means capacity. And to your point, the reason why you want to service that is because a lot of times, you know, I have a good friend that works in that business, and I would ask him to come and service my AC only when I had issues. He would fix the part, and typically that capacitor would be the first thing that he would replace. But then he would say, well, look, if you're not cleaning the evaporator coils, then you're not letting
can't breathe.
Letting it breathe. So then he would spend time there soaping it with some solution, right? It's probably not a really harsh chemical, but then he would water it, and he'd sit there, and I just see him water, and I go, man, well, how much of that are you going to do? But he says, well, this is a problem that people don't do, especially when you're servicing your ACs, is you're not cleaning these evaporator coils. You're not allowing the air to go through so that your system's not over capacity. It's not working and overloading that capacitor. Yeah. So to your point, that's why it's good to have it have maintenance on it at least during your spring, right before the AC, and again in fall, right before you start using your heater. If you have one of those dual AC heater type of deal, right? But you know, I utilize Pearl sheet metal in case they're looking.
Nice little plug.
Yeah, if you
They
are
do good,
looking, this show. So I'd love to have you on. But no. So what is it? Global warming then? Is that
you talked about that earlier.
Well, real quick, because you reminded me with that AC talk. That airflow, right? If your door, when the AC turns on, your doors don't shut on their own. Like if they're cracked open, they don't shut. You probably don't have enough, flow and pressure. My grandpa, he was a carpenter, and man, that guy's house, his doors would slam shut because he had such good flow. But he was, very meticulous about window sills being replaced and all that kind of stuff. And so they'd fire that thing up and boom! You'd smash your finger if you weren't careful. Yeah. So the garage door especially would always just boom. It would shut, and he'd say, "Oh, that's good. That's good. That means there's no air leaks in the house."
So since we're on the topic,
super efficient.
I grew up not with central air and heat. It was mainly a swamp cooler. Or at least these coolers that were at the top of the roof, and these homes came with the swamp cooler. So every year, my dad would have to go up there and replace the carried some type of straw or some type of material, looked like straw to me, right? Yeah. But that would keep it from, keep it cool, and then you'd have to clean the rails there so that the water would flow correctly. But believe it or not, come in the evening when we turn that on, kind of to your point, that thing would have so much air pressure that everything that was on its way would try to find a way out, right? So if a door was slightly open, that thing would shut, and like you said, it would cut your fingers off. So once we knew that was in, you feel like the crackling through the house just go clack, 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 because all that air pressure would come in. But the one thing I do remember, especially during night, is that I always wanted to sleep. It was down the hall. I would kind of just come out to the edge of my door just to kind of get that nice fresh breeze of cold air. And I haven't had to turn on a swamp cooler for years, but I do miss that, and they work very effectively when you maintenance them and you work them properly. But now with the AC, obviously there's nothing like an AC. Right, the refrigerant that comes into your unit blows out really cold air. Yeah. Shoot, man, you can't have. I don't know, especially here in the Central Valley, you really can't go without it.
Well, in Madera's water bill, you can't afford it anyways anymore.
Yeah. So if you're wondering why we're talking so much about ACs, because we are in the Central Valley in triple digits. Probably not as hot as like Texas, though, right? We don't have as bad of humidity, and when we get an ounce of it, we can certainly feel it, and that's what I think when it gets really uncomfortable. But anyway, Jose, I think you had some updates from the city. One of the hot topics.
This has been going on for some time, trying to get or award cannabis licenses to some of the retail businesses that are coming to Madera. As you all know, back in 2016 here in California, Proposition 64 allowed for the use of cannabis, especially as retails. So a lot of cities and municipalities ran to that, started adjusting their ordinances to the state's ordinances and allowing for retail stores to come in. So for a lot of municipalities and cities, I know they ran to that because they felt that this was a way to add more revenue to their budget, right, or to their general budget. And I remember visiting Coalinga. And Coalinga was one of the first stores that was trying to develop some type of retail / manufacturing. So in looking at that, I brought that same idea here, and I was saying, hey, let's incorporate that, see if it's something that we can do to generate more funds. So finally, 2016, now we're in 2023. Yesterday, the council approved to award. Or they went on through phase 4 to award the 2 social equity licenses. And we hope to see them up and running, hopefully, I don't know if by the end of the year. The retail license are coming in next. These are retail, but they're social equity. Then your standard retail licenses would be coming in, hopefully not too far from now. But I'd like to see some up and running, especially at our downtown, or it certainly can use a makeup, of the buildings out there. hopefully with some of the conditions at the planning department, maybe they go through you,
Yeah.
the planning commission.
Yeah.
Then you want them to keep something, a storefront that looks very presentable.
What's the anticipated revenue with these
Well,
retailers?
I mean, here's I'm going to give you some numbers of what I saw when I visited Merced, and other municipalities may say something different, but it can range. Monthly receipts from anywhere from 100 to 150, depending on the size and the capacity of that store, right? But if you're talking, let's just say on the low end, $100,000. Shoot, that's $1.2 million that you can generate, right? And
in tax dollars,
correct, in tax dollars, because everything above the current tax, you're adding another tax on top of that, and that's only for cannabis. So I mean, this is not an increase on the standard. Your resident here that goes out and purchases something. It's only if you're purchasing cannabis, they're adding that tax on top of that.
Right.
And then some of that revenue obviously comes back to.
Now, has cannabis got a sales tax? I mean, because it's not really, it's almost in the food category, right? I mean, or is it taxed like with sales tax, or does it just have its own tax?
Yes, it's taxed. So then that's added. It's tracked, traced, everything. And that.
So it's nearly 13% total.
One
per transaction, right?
Yes. With all the taxes.
With all the taxes, so.
And I mean, obviously that's added revenue to our coffers that we can utilize to, it's at the discretion of the council to decide how they want to best utilize those funds. Whether it be parks, after school programs, or drug prevention programs.
Yeah.
And my case, and this is what I would advocate for, is that we utilize some of those funds to market people to stay in Madera.
Yeah.
So Madera has been a great employer of folks, but it doesn't retain its employees. For the most part. Especially the higher end employees. You do have many that live in the community, but you also have those that they love working in Madera, but they have their families and they have their values and they have their communities out in Fresno or even in other cities out there, Clovis, for example. Yeah. So how do we keep those here so that we can recycle some of that money back, increase our median income, and again, it increases our productivity, our economic growth, and then we can get other retailers that people are always debating about. Why can't we have a Target? Why can't we have a Costco? And these are always ongoing conversations, but at the end of the day, I mean, they look at, well, I have to cater to a certain income. Yeah. Right? Household income. And, you look at Costco and they may say, well, I need more people, demographics, and the income has to make sense for me to put my store out here, to make sure that it's successful. And now that Herndon, my understanding is the biggest store Costco's ever made. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. And it's just a 15-minute drive from here. Right. And it'll certainly draw a lot of people from Madera. So now you know where those sales tax are going to go, right? Mm-hmm. So we need to counter that, not necessarily with another Costco, but maybe add something of that size or that magnitude to also retain a lot of our taxes. Hence why, as you're driving through the 99, you see Love Center, you see the Pilot, you see these gas stations, because people have to stop, put fuel, and essentially they leave their sales tax dollars here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and again, with their marijuana, they're going to have the munchies now, right? So they're going to need to eat something close by.
I think that would be great. Are you thinking of something like Saks Munchies?
You're going to have to, But, I mean, and that's where I hate with California, how they put the cart before the horse again, is that we legalize marijuana, but then at the employer level, it says, well, okay, you can still, your employees still can't consume or, be high, obviously, or you can still test them for marijuana usage and use that against them. It wasn't just until this year that we finally got to the point to where you can't really discriminate an employee based off of marijuana use. Right. And the same thing with the firearms. I mean, obviously, like we said, they're finally fighting, that at the federal level, but California users, they didn't realize when you're going to a dispensary or when you're getting that medical marijuana card, California was very aware that, it's a felony to have marijuana and a firearm. So as a medical marijuana card user, you couldn't buy guns. They said no, they would deny your purchase. And there are a lot of people that are unaware that, you're going to these dispensaries buying legal marijuana to legally consume. But, by the way, state of California is also letting the federal government know that you're buying marijuana and have firearms as well. So this is one of those things where California is not ahead of the game in kind of blanketing and protecting its people. It's weaponizing marijuana in a sense that says everybody wants it. Here, you guys can have it, but you're gonna have to lose your gun rights. So thankfully at the federal level, that's kind of changing to where, because so many states are now approving marijuana in its use and its sale and legalizing it, that they're having no way to enforce that against that particular drug. Obviously, that's still going to be with all the other more harsh drugs, but at least that's something that's coming. Because as a user, if you want to use, California is one of the largest firearm owner states. Like, we're right head and head with Texas. So when you say that the majority of people are buying guns in California, and now we're going to be able to have marijuana, you got to get ahead of it, And that's where, I think like the city should also stand up. Maybe this Madera should be a sanctuary city and say, we'll protect our gun right people.
Wow. You know what?
I didn't know that. I didn't know just by buying it, the medical card.
The implications.
But because you do have to give your license, and so they are recording that information somewhere.
They know it.
Well, just a point of clarification that cannabis is illegal in the federal level.
Still, yes.
And legal in the state level. Mm-hmm. And that's where you have a lot of controversy. Well, it's still illegal. So a lot of times we hear that, people, and they are right to a sense, right? That, but states, I'm not saying states overrule the federal law, because that's not the case. But I think as more and more states continue to adopt these laws in their states, then I think the federal law may see that this may be legalized. And I think there's pressure in Congress to go that route. It just hasn't happened yet. And I don't know if they're keeping that as an ace underneath their sleeve to someday utilize it and say, well, guess what?
In exchange for something else, right?
Something else, maybe a bargaining chip.
But it's just interesting that we don't, again, at a enforcement level, we say, drugs, heroin and cocaine and all these things, like, oh no, it's completely forbidden. Except for California, obviously, we have these now clinics where they want to give drug users, legalized drugs because it's cleaner. But why aren't we legalizing all that stuff? Why aren't we legalizing fentanyl use and heroin use and just like marijuana, saying, well, look, now when you go, you can buy something that was produced by a farm, that is not laced with some crazy drug that's going to kill you. Buy your heroin from a distributor, legalize it.
No, I certainly see your point there.
Would you stand behind legalizing?
Well, that's the thing, right?
It's a tough one, right?
If we are a free market, as we say we are, I think, again, this is just a conversation here, is that, well, you would think that everything should be illegal, and then it kind of regulates itself, right? Yeah. But the problems that we've seen is that when you allow, especially a drug like fentanyl or heroin, I think this happened with the Chinese at some point. I don't know if it was before the Communist Party took over, but they had a problem with heroin. And back then, I don't know if it was the poppy, the smoking of the opium. Thank you. And a lot of their Chinese folks were really becoming very dependent on this opium. Mm-hmm. So there was an opium epidemic taking place in China, and obviously there had to be a rule of law to start, cleaning out that epidemic that was taking place. So I do think that it could happen in a way where you do need government to enforce certain laws and allow certain, certain narcotics. I like that
because another epidemic that goes on is obesity, but I don't see the federal government saying you can only have one Big Mac a week, and if you have two, we're gonna slide you.
It's because and that's funny you say that. I'm glad you brought that up, because it's funny how we can bring out certain items that make sense, others don't, right? Again, sugar, fat, obesity, diabetes, coffee, all these things, but somebody owns a market for it, right? Yeah. There's an interest in that. Don't mess with sugar. Mm-hmm. Don't mess with sugar. Mm-hmm. We own sugar companies. Don't mess with sugar. We pay big money. Almost like the
mafia, right?
We pay big money, right?
Yeah.
We lobby.
They do.
And that's the word lobby. You lobby for your your company's interests, right?
Well, it's interesting. I think I might have shared with you guys. I don't think I shared with it on the show, but that show. Did I say that on the show like a couple weeks ago about it's about health, some health show on Netflix, a documentary. I forgot what it's called. What the Health? It's called
What the Health,
Health.
yes.
Yeah. And that, kind of like you're saying right now, I didn't watch more than 15 minutes of it because I felt like there was an agenda behind it. I felt like there was companies behind it, right? Specifically tobacco, sugar, and alcohol, right? And it was like, I could almost tell you who, like, without even doing any research, and to be fair to them, I didn't do any research, so I don't actually know, but I would imagine that some tree-hugging organization, put this out there, and it was all about how meat is bad.
Yeah.
And it's not sugar. Sugar, your body burns through sugar and will get rid of the excess immediately, right? Yeah. It's really not tobacco because, one hot dog's equivalent to 5 cigarettes, right? So, how many hot dogs are you actually eating versus cigarettes, right? And then, it was almost like, here's my agenda. Let me attack this. Let me attack meat and farming and all things like that. But meanwhile, I'm going to create some alliances with these other companies because I'm telling it's not your guys' fault. It's meat's fault, right? Yeah. And it was like the most off-putting like documentary in those first 15 minutes, and maybe it got better. Like I said, I don't know because I didn't keep watching it. But I said I'm being sold right now. You know. But Jose, I want to ask you. Obviously you're a decision maker on the city council, and I know you've been spearheading this initiative. Does the anticipated revenue from this industry outweigh the potential cons? Right.
Well, I mean, the way I look at it, A1, that's a great question because a lot of people that's the question that you get asked the most. Hey, well, that's just adding more to our current crime, but right now, as we speak, there's already an underground black market that exists here. And you have to admit that if people want to get cannabis or marijuana, they're going to get it somewhere, right? And it could be the black market. It could be cheaper. They may find it somewhere down the street. Somebody may be growing it. It's an illegal grow. But either way, it takes resources, right? If somebody complains and a code enforcement or maybe an officer has to go out there, make a report, shut it down. That in itself is money that's being expended through our general fund because someone's out there investigating this report, right? So, or if you find someone with illegal drugs, or it's California says you can carry so much with you, right? So, I still believe that there is an illicit market going on, right? And we're not collecting a single dime of it. So what if we collect now in a legal way, and no different than cigarettes? Obviously, cigarettes, a certain percentage of that cigarette tax probably goes back to schools or goes back to programs that help people with addiction and or maybe prevention, right? So I think we can utilize the same funds to provide those same services. And I think more like a DARE, for example, right? Or at-risk youth. Or maybe some type of prevention, right? We want to utilize those dollars I'm not sending the message that I want to bring it in as a gateway. People, you'd be surprised how many people consume cannabis. People think that by bringing this store.
But if you're spending more money on DARE programs and telling people not to,
No, but
you're
again,
taking your own money and shooting yourself in the foot.
It's got to be a choice, right? You have to be, but you don't want to start developing a program where you have kids early on saying that, hey, cannabis is good.
Yeah.
Right? Alcohol, for example. We probably all have alcohol in our homes. Do we go and tell our kids that this is a good thing? No, it's a responsible thing. You have to make a good, wise decision when you're coming to drink, right?
Let me ask you like this. So in the gun industry, it's a crime for me to even leave my gun out.
Yeah.
In the marijuana industry, that doesn't exist. So you're talking about because again, remember all the gun laws I have to follow is about protection of children, but yet there's not a single
I guess the
law
argument to
that says you can't leave your marijuana on the kitchen table.
The argument to that, I would say, is if there's evidence, Rohi, that shows that marijuana kills young kids versus guns, I mean, that's a good argument. And I don't want to spark up
Not killed, but leads
a
to
national or a
access
state
of
argument
it.
on
I
that.
mean-
But I think, when you look at that, I mean, now
Yeah.
you said alcohol or something different, but cannabis, for the most part, I don't think you see record high spikes of crime or, in this case, murders because of marijuana.
But
Now,
usage, are we
because
saying
of
we're
the
protecting
illicit trade,
children?
you may
Yeah.
see, this guy went in there trying to steal marijuana, got shot, probably got killed. But I mean, marijuana related, maybe. But the
Yeah.
fact that you have marijuana there, a kid takes it, consumes it, or have a gun out here, it's
It's not even a gun. I mean, it's even just a bullet. I mean,
Yeah.
which
Yeah,
a
but I
bullet
mean-
is not going to do anything. But if my kid takes one of my bullets and just leaves my home, I can face a felony right now. But
Yeah.
if I have a bag of weed on my counter and my kid grabs it from me and takes it to school,
yeah.
There is not a single law that protects
I think
me.
it's all based off the potential risk of that item, and that goes back over to talking about opium and heroin and stuff like that, pills, because if a child was to get a pill and eat it, there would be some more severe consequences than taking a
Negligence,
piece
right?
of weed
Yeah.
and eating that. You might find them asleep or really disoriented or whatever, but there isn't a direct path to death or immediate danger where there would be with a gun and things of that nature. So I think that's also to be taken into consideration.
But
I'm not saying that there should be. What I'm saying is that because it's not, and what you've all said is that basically because it's a nothing, it gets to the point of why is there even regulation to begin with on such an item? I mean, I get it with tobacco. Tobacco's been proven addictive. All the health, negative stuff with health. We have to regulate it because of mostly the addictive nature. But marijuana, everybody's like, who cares? Like, it's not addictive. The side effects are very minor. Long-term use hasn't really proven anything yet. But yet, it's going to be one of the most regulated, taxed, drugs to come about.
Yeah, and that's the thing with cannabis. It's pretty regulated and based on the obviously the when you go out to the store and you want to buy alcohol, you have to show an ID that you're at least age of 21.
Yeah.
When it comes to tobacco, I think it's 18 or is it 21?
It's 21, I
What,
think.
right? You have
I'm not
to
sure.
present an ID. Well, cannabis is no different. Here, the way they're going to regulate it is that they're going to have a security guards right there, and you have to present your ID. You have to, obviously, because they're being regulated not only by the city, but they're also being regulated by the state.
Yeah.
And federal laws probably that apply. So I don't think they're going to allow any young child to go in there and say, you know what, let me pick out this candy from this candy store.
Yeah.
But to your question, you asked me a question. Do you think it's going to outweigh the cons that exist? Obviously, I think it's going to add money to the coffers, right? And again, at the discretion of how we want to best utilize this. I feel, again, I gave you my opinion, but you also have parks. You have more green space. You can add more amenities that can attract, better living standards for a community, right? And that's kind of where it comes down to. If you already have an illicit trade going on, I really don't think, this is my opinion, that this is gonna create an epidemic where, oh shoot, because we have a dispensary, therefore now you're allowing the gateways to open up. It's happening now without us having anything.
What I'm saying is like the way it's proposed to regulate is you're regulating like it's like tobacco. It's like it's so dangerous, but we're going to allow it because we want to have it. Everybody wants to have it. But you look at something like you said, coffee. People are addicted to coffee. So it's just as addictive probably as this tobacco thing. If I stop drinking my coffee today, tomorrow my head is going to hurt. I'm going to have these withdrawals. But yet no security guard is checking to make sure that somebody drinking coffee is over the age of 18.
If you take cannabis, that'll take care of your
withdrawals. But I'm saying like there's caffeine to children, especially like having them drink coffee under the age of 18 should probably be more heavily regulated than marijuana. That's what I'm saying. Like I feel like marijuana should also been like It's allowed. It's do whatever the heck you want with it. We don't care because, again, it's not addictive. It's nothing there.
But because it's been classified as a drug for so long, you have a lot of resistance when it comes to it. And so now you do have to have the reports, and you do have to show, all these things. And it probably is a much bigger deal than what it should be. Because I'll tell you, like, especially here in the valley, like, wineries have blown up, right? And everybody's like, it almost seems like everybody is just starting to make wine. Let's crush wine and let's experiment and let's do all this stuff. And you assume that it's all regular. You assume that they must be, because they're a business, it must be good stuff or whatever. But and I guess you suspect it is, but you're always looking for that great taste that gives you that nice feeling, and when you go over to like whiskeys and things like that, you're like, what is that, 80 proof, 100 proof, and that's all well legal, but you take a couple shots of that, man, you're not in no way, shape, or form capable of driving and operating a vehicle and making decisions that you normally would, right? You're going to be out of it. And I think marijuana is the same, in that same category. You are doing it to feel a certain way, and that way typically doesn't correlate with being able to function, operate vehicles, things of that nature. So I think the regulation's good for sure.
But my point is that, like you said, what is the legal amount that you can use and drive a vehicle right now?
I don't think we know.
We don't know.
You can't.
But that's what I'm saying. Like the cart before the horse. Like you can consume. Now I can't fire you as an employer. You can drive vehicles. You can't be high. We don't even know what that even means anymore.
How much coffee can you have before you start impairing your driving?
How much coffee before you die?
Yeah, right.
Like you can die from caffeine.
So
you can die from energy drinks, but nobody is like nobody has a database saying like in monitoring. Okay, you bought 3 coffees a day. Your 4th one is denied.
Yeah,
but I can die from that.
Yeah,
but marijuana, who has nothing except maybe I smoke too much and I operate a machine and I wreck it, like my car. But that's fine.
So let's put out a message. When you say drink responsibly, smoke responsibly, chew responsibly, eat responsibly, ingesting any cannabis products. Let me put that out there because it is something to be responsible. Yeah. But I do feel that there should be a balance. Again, it's not just let's go out and throw all these things that are bad for you and let society kind of figure it out for themselves.
Let me ask you that. Have you ever smashed your thumb with a hammer?
Have I ever smashed? Yeah.
Okay. It's not regulated.
No.
Is there anything that says, Jose, you've only passed this class, so you can only buy this hammer? Oh, you smashed your thumb 3 times this year. We're taking your hammers away.
I think
like you have the right to hurt yourself.
I think that example may be a little extreme there. Outside of this, but you know what? I think you bring up a good point.
It's something that can hurt me.
Yeah, of
and
course.
The government doesn't prohibit me from buying hammers that could potentially hurt me.
Yeah.
Like I can do that.
Yeah.
But something that could hurt me, like alcohol or caffeine or marijuana, it's regulated.
Yeah.
It's like you can't do that. I don't.
Yeah. So earlier, you kind of Rohi said like the DARE program, right? It's like kind of like, okay, we're gonna legalize it, but don't worry, we're going to use all the money to have a DARE program.
No,
that I disagree, right? Because if we need a DARE program, we need a DARE program, right? And that's kind of the cart before the horse thing. I don't. So I'll back you up a little bit after Jose, after I run it through. But I don't think we try to justify the decision by saying, oh, but we're going to do this, right? If we need those funds, and those funds are going to be able to, take Madera and provide additional services, then provide something with a little bit of substance. The DARE program. I mean, that should probably be like in the school district's budget, right? Because they have direct influence over children. Work with the school districts in order to see that work or transpire, right? And really enforce that. It doesn't have to be something that we, bring in this whole entire industry to our community just for that. But on the flip side to that, I have a friend who has a gym, right? Big gym, big into health and fitness. They had a nutrition shop, everything like that, right? They're really big into that. Well, they also have a ice cream parlor a franchise, right? And you could say, man, what are you doing? You're over here promoting health, but then you also have this ice cream parlor, and it's like, bro, you don't have to go to the ice cream parlor and eat ice cream every single day. You know, this is for leisure, right? This is for
your cheating days.
You know, your cheat days, or, you know, going out with your family and enjoying it, right? So, you know, and nobody's going to regulate, you know, he's not regulating Jim. Hey, bro, you're not supposed to be eating my ice cream all the time, you know, but we each have our own decisions to make, right? And anything that we do, whether it's ice cream, marijuana, alcohol, if you do it in excess, it's going to be bad for you. If you become addicted to anything, it's going to be bad for you. Addictions in general are bad because what an addiction is it starts taking away your time, your energy, and your focus from your priorities, right? Now your house is a mess. Now you're, you know, not showering every day, you know, and it just kind of starts evolving. You're showing up to late work. You're not showing up at all, you know, and you downward spiral from there, right? And that's in any type of addiction is gonna do that to you. Ice cream, you know, that it could lead to that, right? With sugar, you're obese, so you can't stop thinking about food. You're eating, you're munching all the time. You're leaving 30 minutes late or early for lunch. You know, it's consuming your energy and your focus, right? So, anyway, I just wanted to say that I think you can have a DARE program and end this, right? Because, you know, we're not just because we're pushing weed doesn't mean we're trying to.
Yeah,
you know.
And I don't think that's the case. We're pushing weed because pushing weed means hey, come and buy it. It's all we're doing is we're providing a
probably have meetings.
Dispensary.
You're kind of pushing it because you're saying we're going to get these tax dollars, you want it to work, right? You don't want them to come in and fail.
Let me explain. That pushing the weed is saying come and buy weed. Instead, what I'm doing, we're providing a service for a demand that exists. Yeah. That's it, right? No different than alcohol, cigarettes. You provide liquor stores. You provide any type of service demand that's out there. If you provide something and you can be successful at it, then that's fine. You know, I have no problem with that. Now, obviously, certain folks don't like the fact that there's going to be dispensaries in town. They see it as a gateway to additional drugs, and I respect that. The majority of voters, though, approved our measure. Mm-hmm. The majority of voters in California approved the Prop 64. So if I'm looking at a democratic way of processing things, then at this time it's the will of the people. Mm-hmm. And if you have a majority of folks, over 65%, that want to consider this retail stores, and we have to allow for that. I have my own opinions. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we may be conservative, but at the end of the day, let's find a way that again we can start a business, bring some economic life to our downtown. Hopefully it does. I mean, we'll get to see that in 2 years. Maybe we'll have this conversation again. Where is the cannabis industry today? It may be non-existent. The black market may take over. We don't know. But for now, given the opportunity, the programs that's outreach that they do. Okay, monies that we have can be allocated to parks, can be allocated to other amenities, projects, or even gap funding that we don't have. That's kind of where I see that, okay? And again, the vision that I have probably doesn't align to a lot of other people's visions as well, right? They want to see it, well, we don't want that here. Mm-hmm. Okay, it's fine, but they're going to get it somewhere. They go to, we don't want a Target here. It's like saying, well, I'm not saying Target specifically, but somebody will go to Target and purchase out there, and they'll leave their dollars out there. The majority of money that we collect through revenues is through taxes. Sales tax being the big one. Then you have property taxes, and then you have taxes in lieu of vehicle licensing fees, and that's another big chunk of money.
I'll give you two hard ones. Well, the easy one first. So back to the obesity. I feel if that's the way if we're targeting because we identify a problem, then I don't think anybody under the age of 18 should be able to buy
I don't see
ice cream, candy bars, because children can't make decisions, and we're allowing them this easy access to sugar and fattening. But I'm saying that's where I'm saying we can all agree there's an obesity problem.
Oh no, diabetes and obesity,
especially
in our region.
We should help them out and prohibit a child from being able to go to the liquor store and buy that Snickers bar or whatever it is until they're 18.
So are you proposing that we utilize some of those funds to help with obesity and diabetes? Because if that is the case, then that's going to be brought up, and I'll make sure we bring that up.
I'll give you a hard one, though.
Okay, give me a hard one.
Legalize prostitution.
Okay.
He wasn't ready for that one.
It's
Okay.
too-
Okay.
it's not-
Is it not addictive? Not addictive.
Okay.
Okay. You can tax it whatever you want. You know, however you can make a license for it. You can make a licensed house, whatever you want.
But
Are you helping the problem because of now you taking the prostitutes off the street that are getting abused by their pimps and whatever
Okay.
making it
okay.
because I'm asking you because again that's what Vegas is done.
Okay.
You know, Vegas has legalized prostitution, and they said the benefits is now these girls get health care, they get better environments, you know what I mean, like it's because again, like you say, like just like with marijuana, they're going to do this activity. Why not just legalize it and then bring up the status and the quality of these services so that women aren't being abused, they're not.
I like where you're
trafficking.
going with this, but I think you missed the point about the cannabis.
Okay.
And I said it's the will of the people.
Sure.
So as representatives of the people, we have to make sure that that is something that they want to go. So the reason why we went through this measure and we put it for the voters to vote for it is to see, hey, I hear a lot of yes and I hear a lot of no. Well, let's take all that out of play and let's let the voters decide if they want to move this forward. Your proposition, if that was the case, I would say, well, if we have enough people to support that, then let's go ahead and put it to the voters. If they decide to do to move forward with that proposition, then I would have to support it. I have my own personal opinions, of course, but it's the will of the people, and that's the one thing I have to always come back to is what is the will of the people, and the will of the people is the majority of the people. So if you get 30% that support your proposition, again with legalizing prostitution, then it's not going to fly.
Yeah.
As much as you and I we would want that to be here, that wouldn't fly.
Sure.
That happens in Vegas. They collect. I personally don't think that would be something that I want to bring into our community. Again, I think you're just being hypothetical.
I am. And what I'm saying is the lead into that is say if it was approved, if the majority of the people said it was approved, what regulation are you going to bring now? Are you going to say, well, we have to swipe your ID every time you go to this place, and there's a database that does this, or are you just going to? Would you be saying it's just legal and let the industry decide itself?
We live in different times. I think like I said, if the people decided that this is something they wanted to back, I think it would be great. I find it demoralizing to women in general, but some may find it as a way of survival. I don't know. I just don't think that would be something that I would feel comfortable with. But if it was something that the city said, you know what? We need it because we see it out there somewhere where it's just not regulated.
And that's what I'm saying.
No, but again, I think I would bring it to the people to decide, right? And if they said yes, move forward with it, then I mean, you'd have to justify as to why, though. I mean, do we have that problem here? Do we have a lot of it where it's?
I would imagine so. I think it's a problem worldwide. I mean, there's no.
I think it's very openly talked about. It's not. I don't think it's a statistic that they're going to say.
Let's go to the root to that. I mean, is that the solution?
I'm looking at it. It's not the solution in the sense of like it's going to reduce that activity. Will it increase the activity? But I'm saying it's a quality of life. It's addressing the fact that because it's not regulated and because it's just like marijuana, just like what we're trying to bring marijuana and say like, well, now there's going to be drug dealers and we're going to clean up and it's going to be, clean weed. Don't got to worry about where it's coming from. It's like highly regulated. It's taxed. It's the same thing with these women as opposed to being abused and beat.
But is it women?
Do they have
or is it
diseases and do they have whatever? It's bringing up the quality of the service, but also like making these women no longer a slave, but making them an employee, so that they have access. And this is not a new idea. I'm saying like that's the model that they brought apart with.
They can
Vegas,
qualify for home ownership because they have a W-2 now and everything like that.
They're not controlled by some. I know it's a weird topic. What I'm saying is that the lead in is because
these are the conversations we want to have.
Yeah,
right?
the feel for marijuana and legalization was to identify what everybody's doing.
Yeah.
And begin to get rid of these drug dealers and to improve the quality of what people are getting so that people aren't getting stuff that was laced or whatever. So it's just not being applied to every aspect is what I'm saying. Regardless of women, it's like this was the next industry. We can make a bunch of money from it.
I think that, just to keep going down the wormhole, right? But I think it
For the 5 viewers that are watching,
I think it does, create a safer environment within that industry for sure. And it's dangerous. It would, I assume it would be dangerous to go into an alleyway and buy marijuana, right? Mm-hmm. And I say alleyway because, it's dark and, because you can't sell it. It's illegal, right? So you can't just be out in public, hey, give me a nickel or whatever. So you do got to go into where these people live. Typically, it's in a neighborhood that's a little bit rougher, right? And it doesn't have to be, but nonetheless, you're going into an unknown place, and who knows? You have that. Your second or third time coming in, and they say, "Hey, man, this guy always has a nice watch on." I always see his laptop bag right there. Why don't we shake him down, because we're only making, $20 off this guy a week, let's just shake him down, take his money. That you ruin that risk, right? But going into a store that's regulated, security, in public view, there's a, if you're going to partake, I think it's a lot safer, right? Mm-hmm. Same thing with the prostitution, right? I mean, and then the hopes would be, if I'm a customer, right? If I'm a paying client, the hopes would be that I'm safer from the risk that industry poses, which is STDs and other types of diseases sexually related, right? And so I would hope that those regulations would be to prevent that harm from being done. Yes, you're going to have to pay more, right? But you're paying for that assurance, basically. And I think if you did this for anything, right, you would say, well, shoot, okay. But then it's kind of like, if the going got tough at home and you got, I was to say, hey, my buddy or my cousin needs a place to stay. I know you have that extra room. He's willing to pay $700 a month. And you would say, well, shoot, man, that would really help me because it would take my $1,500 mortgage down to $800 and he'd pay half of it and I'd have all this extra money, right? And so if you're only looking at the dollar side of it, you're like, okay, that sounds like a great deal. But now you have to evaluate, well, who is this guy?
Is he a prostitute?
Yeah. Who is he? What's he doing? What's he about, right? Yeah. Is he going to be bringing ladies over to my house, late at night?
I need to collect more.
Is he dangerous, right? Is he dangerous? Is he going to be drinking all night? Is he going to be talking all loud on the phone, walking around butt naked? Who knows, right? There's all these factors. And then that's when the actual, I guess your moral decisions kind of kick in, because on a business standpoint, it makes sense. Yeah, I have an extra room. You have $700 extra a month. I have a need. I want to reduce my costs, so let's do it, right? But then it's like, but wait, I got to know who you are, right? Oh, well, I'm an atheist. I really don't believe in, God, and I hate people who do, and, I'm very vocal. I'm open about it. Okay, well, I don't want you influencing my kids because I have an entirely different narrative at my house, right? And so this isn't going to work out, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's, but then that goes down to the will of the people, right? And I think those are the decisions that the people have to make at the voting booths, where it's, what do we want? No, I don't want this, because you know what? Even though we're going to get an extra 1.2 million and there's going to be another patch of grass right there where we can play in, it's just, I don't want that, right? Yeah. That's the will of the people right there. And so, I could respect you as a public servant, saying that, giving it to the people. But at the same time, I do know that, anybody in an elected official does have influence over people, and you are obligated to do research and really, give information to the people based off of a decision that you've already made, right? Yeah. So.
No, I agree. And, when it comes to, I know I don't want to get too caught up in the prostitution deal here, but I just want to make sure that when we're talking about it, we have to also look at it. Are we being biased and looking at it as a male perspective versus bringing someone in that can say, you know what? You look at it that way, but what's the root of this service?
Why does this service, men in there.
Why does this service? Yeah, why does this service exist? What is it that it's trying to do? It's trying to accomplish something, a need, right? There's a demand.
It's identifying, like with marijuana use. It's identifying something already happening.
Correct.
and just basically
But
improving
what's
the
the
environment
desire
around it.
behind wanting to seek that? It's the sex, right? It's the
It depends.
intercourse or whatever the case may be.
Vegas is about. I mean, the escort service doesn't have to necessarily be the sex aspect.
Well, I mean,
if you're a single guy
so
that's on a
escort
business
service
date
and prostitution, I think, are two different services, right? Or would you say they
go
mirror?
hand in hand?
Okay.
But I'm
Because I
saying
think
that
you're being more.
can you have an escort service in California?
I don't know. I don't know.
Is in it, or is that going to be on one of those?
Yeah.
You know. And again, my point is that most of these things, just like you've been saying, they regulate because of the fear of children and getting caught up in this. That's not with prostitution. That doesn't exist. But my point and the joke about that is, again, to go say, like, we won't allow anything except in this store. But my ice cream truck guy drives around with a horn as loud as I can hear, with his doors open, blasting my kids, saying, come by come by. But there's no one regulation that says ice cream stores, you can only be one on a block. You can't go driving around. You can't be geared towards children.
And again, because that voice hasn't been heard yet.
Because the ice cream industry is strong. They'll kill me.
No, it's not the ice cream. It's not the ice cream. If the pandemic exists or an epidemic exists where you have severe obesity that's caused by excessive sugar intake, then at some point, we're talking about that now. Schools are talking about that now. Yeah. And there has been a lot of movements to try to stop the consumption. Pepsi's, Gatorades. I don't know if you remember this. This was a big thing that, hey, you couldn't sell the big gulps no more, right? I mean, I don't know if California...
Supersize
see how much regulation there was there, but yet
look,
nothing to say can't gear towards children.
If you leave our society to our own devices, I think essentially you can see some really crazy stuff going on here.
That's
but if you see this pattern... an epidemic that's taking place because of obesity, diabetes, and we face one within our surrounding community, and that's going to be obesity and diabetes. So if we're not talking about it, then there's issues, right? And I think the public health will let you know that, hey, we're starting to see an increase in these particular cases. Yeah. So ICU may be, the hospital may have seen the other stuff, right? And it typically follows. What do you think the root cause of that? I mean, is it the lower income people that are starting to suffer from this, or is it the higher middle income people that do this?
My point is, America is supposed to be about freedoms.
I get it.
As an adult,
I get it, but
do
look,
is there a freedom to go buy whatever I want food-wise?
Yes. But look at the choices of your dollar versus someone that doesn't generate as much. Let's say, for example, that you generate $5, right? I'm just giving you an example, and that person on the lower end generates 50 cents. Your $5 can extend more to buy healthier products. It's a choice.
Sure.
Buy more healthier products that cost a bit more versus that person that makes 50 cents. And again, I'm using a very extreme example here. I'm not trying to, bring anything out of it, but I mean, that 50 cents may only extend to maybe more carbohydrates, or more fats, or more sugar. So all those three things combined, that's not a very healthy diet throughout the day, especially if you're not working that off in some capacity.
Sure.
Right? Carbohydrates are good, but if you're working them off, but if not, then your body's absorbing them. And this is where you get diabetes. Maybe the fats are.
Let me ask you this: is there a gym membership that's free to?
There is. Planet Fitness has just announced that some of the high school kids can get that. So
no, but
these are movements.
I'm saying you're saying it's a social equity thing. So why can't me, who makes only $20,000 a year, get a free gym membership?
Why not?
I'm just saying. But I mean, if you want to address those issues, and you're saying the food access. The food bank that meets down the street here gives you away free vegetables and produce. Yeah. So if you want access, it's free.
I'm not saying that it isn't. We have many services that are willing to reach out and provide these services to families that may not have access to that. I'm not saying that everybody needs to have the same access, but if we start seeing patterns, we can't turn a blind eye and say, you know what, that's their choice. Well, yeah, in a way it is their choice, but their choices are limited in comparison to others. I'm not saying that I'm not trying to do a socialist movement here, what have you. It sounds like it, right? But I mean, I'm just saying you can't turn a blind eye though and not see that.
Sure.
You cannot.
Well, I mean, those are certainly realities, right? I mean, what's better to eat, pork or salmon, right? What's healthier, but what costs a whole lot more.
No,
so I get that, but I think that for the subject that we're on, it always comes down to what are the immediate risks, right? And meanwhile, you gotta consider rights being infringed, right? You don't want nobody wants a government telling you, no, you can't have another soda. Like, what do you mean I can't have another? I'm free to do as I please, sort of thing, right? But then when you get to a point where you're harming somebody, like, well, you can't have another beer because you've already had, what is it, 2 in an hour in California, technically at the bar, right? Because the chances of you hurting somebody or yourself, and hurting yourself, I feel is like always like, yeah, we care about that, but like the hammer thing, it's like, well, you hurt yourself, okay, but it's the potential risk of hurting somebody else while hurting yourself, right? That's what we really care about. I saw a study about a self-regulated society and how we just couldn't do it. There has to be regulations, rules, and laws enforced by government, right? And as much as we want to keep government out of our businesses, we need them in many different ways in order to have a society that's functioning.
Yeah.
And they said a good test on whether or not somebody could manage themselves in a self-governed society is sit in the parking lot at a grocery store and see if people return their shopping cart into the return shopping cart area, right? Because there is no laws against not returning your cart, so you don't have to. But it's the right thing to do, right? It frees up parking spaces. It helps the store be more efficient in returning them. All these things. It's the right thing to do, right? But if you can't take the time to take that cart and put it back where it's supposed to be, that person would fail in a self-governed society because there's no law against it. So I'm just going to do the not so right thing, right? Yeah. I'm just going to litter, because
or did you create
no
a job
laws.
Though, Abel?
What's that?
Are you going to take away a job if we all become the best citizens of returning our carts? Now that cart guy is not needed anymore.
Well, I don't like to look at it like that because then it would be like throwing crumbs on the floor and saying, well, I'm giving that busboy a job so he can vacuum, right? That would be a little bit disrespectful in my standpoint. But they still have to hire somebody to go and collect the baskets from the return area. You're just helping that person not be out in the 105-degree heat trying to collect them from everywhere. You're preventing that cart from going and scratching somebody else's car. You're avoiding the flower beds from being beat up from people throwing them into throwing their cart into them. So it's just the right thing to do.
Gotcha.
Well, we've certainly beat up this topic. I think we started off with climate change, and then we ended
with
up
AC units.
AC units, correct. AC
went
units.
from AC units to prostitution coming to a town near you.
And this is why I love the weekly jargon, is that we can actually have a good argument or maybe a debate, right? Yeah. And a discussion about the topics that we feel are important. That are taking place right now, right? Cannabis, for example. Sure. That's something that we've just awarded. And we hope maybe in a year we'll have the discussion again, Rohi, and maybe you may be right.
Be a cloud of smoke right here. And pass, guys.
Yes. But I'm sorry I couldn't bring you guys gummies today, but we'll make sure we pick them up once that store opens up. Yeah. Anyhow, I'm not sure if you want to finish off with any ending comments there, but the next topic that I'd like to talk about is tips. We give tips.
What kind of tips?
But you talked about it, right?
Tipping a prostitute or
no.
Yeah. How much? 20%?
Well, look, here's the thing. Maybe
just because it's not regulated, are you supposed to tip?
We can dive into it now if you like. But, what I mean is, like, in general, there is an expectation that when you go dine, when you do something of some service, tips, are they mandatory?
Sure.
Or are they at your discretion?
I like it.
Right?
I was just talking about that with a friend yesterday.
And I think it'd be a good conversation to dive into it because more and more I start seeing that I'm paying electronically, and before I get the service, they're already asking me to tip them.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, wait a minute. I thought a tip meant...
Are you giving it away?
I don't know how this is going to go. I don't know how they're rating it.
So let's hopefully bring that next week. If you like to comment, for this future show, please do let us know your experiences and how you feel about that.
I was ready to dive right in, man. Yeah, good point there. So we'll talk about the tip later, or this week, like next week.
Are you a cheapskate? Or
yeah. All right, guys. Well, this is the weekly jargon. Let us know what you think. If you have any tips for this show regarding the AC units, and what are your thoughts about cannabis? Is it addictive enough to harm a community, or do the revenues outweigh that? Do the regulations outweigh the risk? Even if you want to dabble into prostitution, there's a lot of good subjects here, but ultimately it's the will of the people. How intrusive we want governments, or how much power we want to give governments to regulate these things, and then of course as a society, how do we accept them, adapt to them, all of that good stuff. So follow us on the Weekly Jargon, share, comment, post your thoughts, and we'll certainly get back to you. We'll see you next week.